Hello. My name is Rachel Moore, and 4 years ago, I died because I was too naive to see the knife coming from the people I trusted most. But today, I came back, not to forgive, not to forget, but to rewrite everything. The moment I saw Ethan Morgan's familiar figure by the college application desk, I felt that chill again, the one from my past life. But this time, I was ready. He rushed up to me, grabbing my hand like he had any right to touch me. "Rachel, please, for me and for Vanessa, just do it this once," he said, his voice soft like poisoned honey. Behind him stood Vanessa Blake, pale and teary-eyed as always, clutching her hands together like some tragic heroine. "Sister Rachel, I know this is asking too much, but we really need to get into B University," her voice trembled. Around them, Ethan's buddies and Vanessa's clique started chanting the same tune, all acting like I owed them the world. "Come on, Rachel. You're the top scorer. It's just one favor. Don't be selfish." I stared at them, disgusted. I had seen this scene before. In my past life, these exact words had cornered me like a criminal, guilt-tripped me into throwing away my future. I had done as they asked. I negotiated with the university to lower its score requirements for our class using my top rank. And what did I get? Reported for admissions fraud, stripped of my accolades, humiliated online, my family destroyed, my parents imprisoned by Ethan's father, Richard Morgan. And Ethan? He held Vanessa in his arms and told the press that it was my vanity that ruined me. That I deserved it. My chest tightened, but I took a deep breath. Not this time. I yanked my hand from his grip, so hard that Ethan flinched. Without a word, I marched straight to the desk, picked up the pen, and wrote 4 bold letters. Tsinghua University. No hesitation. No mercy. Ethan's expression crumbled like wet ash. Jake Thompson, his lapdog, jumped forward with a scowl. "What the hell, Rachel? You playing us?" I didn't even bother to look at him. "Playing?" I said coldly. "I never promised you anything. Since when was my application any of your business?" With that, I handed my form directly to the teacher inputting the data. The teacher gave me a quick glance, saw the firm look on my face, and nodded before taking the sheet.
Done.
I turned around, ready to walk out of this place, and never look back. "Rachel." Ethan's shout was sharp, angry, desperate. He lunged after me, grabbing my wrist again. "You really gonna make me do this?" he growled. He dragged me toward the side hallway and shoved me against the wall, the force jarring my spine. "You think you can just walk out of here? If you don't switch your application to B University, you're not leaving." His hand pressed down on the confirmation slip I'd just gotten back from the teacher, the only official proof of submission.
He thought he had me.
"Ethan, you've lost your damn mind," I said, voice level. "Damn right I have," he hissed. "Don't forget, you're my girlfriend. You've sacrificed for me before. You owe me." I stared at him, and something in me just snapped. "Girlfriend?" I asked. "Then what's Vanessa? Who is she to you?" He blinked, faltered for a second, then quickly recovered. "She's my sister. She's sick. I have to take care of her." "You're being jealous of your own sister now? Do you even have a conscience?" I almost laughed. "Let go," I said quietly. "No," he snarled. "Not unless you go change your choice.
Do it now."
"You'll regret this."
My voice was ice.
He didn't flinch. Instead, he shoved me into one of the empty consultation rooms and slammed the door shut, locking it with a loud click. "Sit here and think about what you're doing. You'll come around." Through the door, I heard his fake comforting voice again. "Don't worry, Vanessa. She's just throwing a fit. She loves me the most. Give her a minute." Then her syrupy sobbing. "Ethan, don't be so mean to Rachel. It's all my fault." I slid down the wall, my hands clenched into fists. In my last life, I begged and cried from this same locked room, but no one came. I missed the submission deadline and ruined my future. But this time I was ready. I reached into the inner pocket of my uniform and pulled out a second phone one my mom had given me as a backup. I calmly turned it on and typed a message to my dad. "Dad, I'm locked in the easternmost consultation room on the 2nd floor. Ethan Morgan did it. Bring security." Then I opened another chat. Alex, I typed, use the backup password. Lock in my college application first choice Tsinghua University. 5 minutes max. My friend Alex Carter, a tech prodigy now working at a major software firm, replied in less than 10 seconds.
Got it.
Done in 3. I switched off the phone and waited in silence. Minutes passed. Then came the thunder of footsteps and shouting from outside. Where's my daughter? Ethan Morgan, what the hell have you done? My dad's voice, loud and furious. Uncle, your misunderstanding's just cooling down, bang bang. The door flew open. Blinding light spilled in. My mom rushed to my side, voice shaking. Rachel, are you all right? I stood, brushed the dust off my skirt, and said, let's go. Ethan stood at the doorway, face pale and shocked. I didn't look at him as I walked past. He probably thought I'd cry again, beg for his approval. Not this time. At the end of the hallway, I paused and turned my head.
Ethan.
His eyes lit up, just for a moment. There is no us anymore, I said. There's only me. Always has been. When I woke up the next morning, the house phone had already rung 3 times sharp, rapid rings that echoed with urgency. My mother's voice was laced with confusion as she answered. I walked into the living room, still tying my hair up, just in time to hear a man's voice blaring from the receiver. Where's the top scorer, Rachel Moore? She agreed to take the lead in signing with B University. Now she's vanished? Dozens of parents are protesting at the school gate. You better explain this, Mrs. Moore. It was the director of admissions from B University, the same man I had briefly met the day before. His fury was palpable, his words laced with panic and rage. My mother looked at me with wide eyes, stunned. I met her gaze calmly as she replied, You must be mistaken, sir. My daughter never agreed to anything like that. And then, without waiting for a response, she gently hung up. The silence in the house lasted barely a beat before the phone rang again. My father walked over, yanked the line from the wall, and said firmly, Ignore them. I nodded, but the battle had only just begun. I turned on my phone and checked the local news app. The first thing I saw was a headline splashed across the screen. College admission scandal. Rachel Moore accused of backing out on B University agreement. The accompanying video was taken outside the school gate, dozens of angry parents waving banners with bold black letters. Top scorer Rachel Moore promised us. B University must lower admission score. And there they were, Jake Thompson and Sophia Collins, standing front and center, playing the role of righteous victims. Jake's expression was furious as he told the reporter, Rachel promised Ethan, our boss, that she'd help us. Now she's run away. Our future's ruined because of her betrayal. Sophia sniffled into the mic, tears welling conveniently in her eyes. Vanessa's sick because of this. How could Rachel be so heartless? The camera panned across the crowd and landed on Ethan Morgan, his arm wrapped protectively around a trembling Vanessa Blake. His face was grim, full of feigned sadness. He looked into the lens and said hoarsely, This might be a misunderstanding. Rachel isn't the kind of person to abandon her friends. I'll talk to her. I'm sure she'll make things right. I stared at the screen, at the performance they were putting on, and felt a cold fire rise in my chest. My parents, on the other hand, were livid. They're twisting everything, my father shouted. Let's go down there and expose them. But I held up my hand. No need, I said quietly. Let them act. I've got something better. I opened an anonymous forum I had bookmarked for a long time and found an old thread detailing B University's shady history of backdoor admissions, score manipulation, and favoritism. It was detailed, precise, and long buried. I paid to bump the thread to the front page, then added a simple comment underneath. This year's drama promises to be the best one yet. After that, I leaned back and waited. Not long after, my phone lit up again with a message from an unknown number. Rachel, you need to come to the school gate by 3 p.m. The parents are angry, and only you can calm them down. Don't show up and you'll face the consequences. I smiled as I read it. In my past life, I had been too afraid to attend this clarification. I had stayed away, and they pinned everything on me. But this life was different. This time, I would stand right in the center of the storm and let them choke on their lies. At exactly 3 p.m., I arrived at the school gate with my parents. We were barely out of the car when the crowd erupted. There she is. That selfish, manipulative girl. She ruined our kids' futures, one woman shrieked. Another lunged toward me, fingers outstretched like claws, but my father stepped in front and shoved her away. My mother pulled me closer. Reporters flocked around, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. It was chaos. Then, just as suddenly, the crowd parted. Richard Morgan had arrived. Flanked by bodyguards in dark suits, he walked up like a king surveying his domain. His eyes bore into me like I was dirt. "Rachel Moore," he said, voice cold and commanding. "You've disappointed everyone. You'll apologize now, in front of all these parents and the media. You'll tell them you'll go back to B University and fix what you broke." He wasn't asking. He was issuing orders like he had a right to dictate my life. Then came Vanessa, stepping from behind him, eyes red, clutching a phone in her hand. "Sister Rachel," she said softly, "why did you lie? You promised to help us." She turned the phone screen toward the crowd. There on it was a screenshot of a chat message. My name beside the words, "Don't worry. I'll help you." But I had never sent that message. I knew exactly when and how it had been faked. Ethan had used my phone behind my back. And now they were using it to crucify me. Ethan stepped forward, supporting Vanessa dramatically, his face etched with sorrow. "Rachel," he said, "I know you're upset because I took your confirmation form. But I did it for everyone. Maybe your application didn't go through in time, but we can still fix it if you admit your mistake." I almost burst out laughing. The performance, the lies, the manipulation, it was textbook Ethan Morgan. And it was time to destroy it. "Let's test your theory, shall we?" I said coolly. I took out my phone and opened the notification from the official admission system. I turned it to the camera. One line, large and clear. "Candidate, Rachel Moore. Accepted, Tsinghua University." The crowd gasped. I waited, then scrolled down to the next line. "Candidate, Ethan Morgan. Accepted, Binhai Vocational and Technical College." Dead silence. Richard lunged forward, yanking his own phone out to double-check. His hands trembled. Ethan looked like he'd been punched.
"Impossible," Richard whispered.
"This is a mistake. The system is wrong. There's no way. Would you like to see the official notarization?" A calm, firm voice cut through the chaos. Mr. Harris, our family's legal advisor, stepped forward in a navy suit, carrying a file bag. The entire application process for Rachel Moore was notarized in real time. "The data is certified and untampered. Everything is true." He turned his gaze to Richard and Ethan. "I'm also here to inform you both that we will be filing charges for unlawful confinement, coercion, and attempted tampering with academic records." The crowd rippled with gasps. "You're insane," Ethan yelled. "I didn't do anything. I was just trying to help her." "Really, Mr. Harris said. "Then explain this." He pulled out a USB stick, plugged it into a laptop, and pressed play. Ethan's voice filled the air. "Don't worry, Vanessa. Rachel's just emotional. She'll come around. I've got her in my hand. Once she's out of options, she'll cling to me, and we can be together officially. My parents will have no choice but to approve us." Chaos erupted. Parents who had been shouting at me earlier now stared at Ethan like he had grown horns. He turned pale, stammering, "That's fake. It's edited. I was set up." "How about this then, Mr. Harris?" Switched to surveillance footage, clear video of Ethan taking my phone, turning his back, and typing furiously before handing it back. Timestamp, right before Vanessa's message appeared. "Still think it's fake?" he asked. Ethan's face contorted into rage. He pointed at me, screaming, "You did this. You planned this whole thing, Rachel. You're a monster." I didn't flinch. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my spare phone. "Don't worry," I said softly. "I have a little gift for Vanessa too." The moment I pressed play, Vanessa's world cracked open like a glass shell under a hammer. Her voice poured from the speaker, bright and mocking, soaked in the kind of arrogance only someone who thought they had already won could possess. "Of course I got her," she said, laughing lightly. "You think Ethan would ever stay loyal to someone like Rachel Moore? She's so uptight, so moral, so boring. All I had to do was cry a little, cough a few times, and act weak. Men eat that up." My voice remained steady as I watched the blood drain from Ethan's face. "Vanessa Blake, scheming schoolgirl turned professional manipulator. You played your role beautifully." On the recording, her best friend Sophia chimed in, giddy with admiration. "You're amazing, Ness. I didn't even think you could pull this off. That top scorer title was a death sentence the way you twisted it. Ethan must be eating out of your hand." Vanessa's laughter followed, sweet and cruel. "Please, I've been playing him for years. And now I get everything Ethan, his family's fortune, and Rachel? She'll be yesterday's trash." The crowd was paralyzed. You could feel the air thicken with disbelief. The parents who had screamed at me not 20 minutes earlier were now looking at Vanessa like she was something rotting under a microscope. One particularly sharp-eyed woman, who had thrown the loudest insults, actually staggered back and whispered, "My God." And then Richard Morgan, titan of business and patriarch of entitlement, finally cracked. He turned toward Vanessa, face contorted with rage, veins bulging at his temple. With no warning, he raised his hand and slapped her. The sound echoed louder than any protest could have. Vanessa collapsed to the pavement, stunned and speechless. "You little witch!" Richard roared, his voice shaking. "You used me. You used my son. You destroyed everything."
She didn't speak.
She couldn't. All her sweetness, her delicate fragility, it shattered right there beside her reputation. Ethan didn't move to help her. He just stared at me, something primal and broken simmering in his eyes. Hatred, confusion, maybe even the remnants of affection. I didn't care to dissect it anymore. I took a deep breath and turned to face the crowd fully. "This is what you believed in," I said, my voice clear, unwavering. "You watched one person cry and assumed I was the villain. You followed rumors instead of asking questions. You handed your children's futures to people like this." I gestured toward Ethan, then Vanessa. "And you were ready to burn me alive for them." The crowd lowered their eyes. A few parents awkwardly shifted their feet. One mother stepped forward, looking remorseful. "Rachel, we're sorry. We didn't know." "No," I said sharply. "You didn't want to know." And that silence was louder than their earlier protests. "Mr. Harris stepped up, calm as always. The charges are being filed. Ethan and Vanessa will be held responsible for unlawful confinement, data tampering, and reputational defamation. We'll let the law handle the rest." He gave me a brief nod. His job was done. Mine wasn't. I turned back to Vanessa, who was still on the ground, dazed. "You like attention so much," I said quietly. "I thought you deserved a proper spotlight." Her lips quivered. "You don't know what you've done," she hissed. "Ethan will never forgive you." "Forgiveness?" I laughed. "I'm not here for forgiveness. I'm here to make sure neither of you ever forget." With that, I walked away, heels clicking like punctuation against the pavement. My parents flanked me, protective and proud. The reporters tried to swarm, but Mr. Harris held them back. I didn't answer a single question. I didn't need to. The truth had spoken for me. As we left, I glanced over my shoulder once. Ethan was still standing there, motionless, staring at the broken remains of the life he thought he controlled. Vanessa was sobbing quietly, mascara streaked like blood. The crowd had begun to turn on them. Their kingdom had fallen. And I was free. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. But freedom didn't taste sweet. It tasted like ashes. Because while justice had been served, the girl who once loved Ethan Morgan with all her heart had long since been buried under betrayal and ruin. That Rachel died the day she jumped. What rose from the ashes wasn't a girl anymore. It was something sharper, colder, and infinitely stronger. That night, the headlines exploded. Top scorer Rachel Moore clears her name in spectacular turnaround. Rich heiress exposed as mastermind behind fake scandal. Ethan Morgan. From campus star to national joke. I didn't bother reading most of them. I already knew how this story ended. But the next chapter was mine to write. The headlines didn't stop. They multiplied like wildfire on dry grass, each one more theatrical than the last. The fall of the golden boy, Ethan Morgan's darkest hour. From top scorer to national heroine, Rachel Moore's perfect reversal. Scheming sweetheart Vanessa Blake exposed in viral audio leak, and it was only the second day. I didn't enjoy the attention, not really. I didn't gloat. There was no thrill in being vindicated in front of strangers who once spit venom in my face. It felt more like being released from a cage I never agreed to be locked in. But it was only the beginning. The Morgan family's fortress began to crack. Ethan and Richard were granted temporary bail, but the public had turned vicious. Overnight, their business partners vanished like rats abandoning a sinking ship. The Lou Group's stock price nosedived. News broke of frozen assets, canceled joint ventures, and banks demanding early repayment. The mighty Morgans were free men on paper but drowning behind closed doors. And through it all, I said nothing. I watched the chaos unfold like a distant observer, not as the avenger, but as a survivor who had already mourned what was lost. Then the messages started. Dozens of unfamiliar numbers flooding my inbox. I didn't need to guess who it was. I'd blocked Ethan's personal line long ago, but he was persistent, switching burner phones like a criminal. At first, it was venom. You're sick. You think this is over? I'll ruin you like you ruined me. Don't get cocky, Rachel. You think you're safe now? This isn't a victory. It's just round one. I read them without reacting, then deleted each one with a cold flick of my thumb. After 2 days of radio silence from me, the tone changed. The rage dulled into whining self-pity. I was manipulated. It was Vanessa. She lied to me. I didn't know what she was doing. I just wanted to help our class get into college. That was all. I almost laughed. The man who had locked me in a room and tried to blackmail me into submission now claimed to be a victim of bad influence. Classic Ethan. A week passed. His messages became poetic, like love letters dipped in delusion. Rachel, please. What we had, it wasn't fake, was it? All those years growing up together, don't they mean anything to you? I still remember the first time I held your hand. You were wearing that white sundress. We skipped school and got ice cream. I knew you were special. I stared at the screen, unreadable. Did he really think memories could erase destruction? That a few romantic anecdotes could make me forget the cold walls of that locked consultation room? That he had buried me and called it a favor? When the last message came, I only have you left, Rachel.
I'm sorry.
Please. Say something. Even if it's to curse me that I knew he had hit rock bottom. So I compiled everything. Every text, every insult, every apology, every lie dressed up as love. I stitched them together like a case study. And then I sent them all of Themto, a local media blogger known for takedowns. I used an anonymous email, titled it, The 3 Psychological Stages of a PUA Narcissist. Original messages attached. 30 minutes later, the blog post was live. It exploded. Screenshots circulated like wildfire. Internet users dissected each message with scalpel precision, analyzing Ethan's shifting tones like amateur psychologists. Memes sprouted. Hashtags trended. Ethan's style became shorthand for every manipulative man who thought crocodile tears could excuse betrayal. The entire nation mocked him, and for once, I felt a sliver of peace. But peace is a fragile thing. And class group chats are landmines. One night, my phone pinged. At Rachel Moore, it was Jake Thompson, freshly released on bail. Rachel, we know we hurt you. I know you probably hate us. But we're sorry. Truly. Then came more. We were wrong. We shouldn't have sided with Ethan. You were right all along. Can we apologize in person? Their messages read like a group of toddlers caught stealing candy, desperate for forgiveness now that the consequences had caught up. I didn't respond. I let them sweat. But they kept going. Jake messaged again. Ethan's ruined. His dad's business is done. Isn't that enough? Can't he let go now? After all, we're classmates. That line struck a nerve. Let go? Let go like they let go of me when I begged for mercy? Like they let my parents be humiliated and trampled by angry mobs? I typed one sentence. When you were cornering me in front of the media, did you think about letting go then? I hit send. The group chat fell into silence like a theater after a gunshot. I left the chat, deleted every last contact from high school. That chapter was closed. A few days later, Ethan's desperation turned physical. He waited outside my house. I spotted him from my bedroom window, drenched in rain, his shirt clinging to his frame like wilted paper. He didn't move, just stood there, staring, like a ghost begging to be seen. My mother found him the next morning when she went to throw out the trash.
She didn't yell.
She didn't cry. She walked upstairs, filled a mop bucket with cold water, opened the balcony, and dumped it over his head. You show up again, I'll break your damn legs, she said in a tone so calm it chilled me. Ethan scrambled away, soaked and shivering. But he didn't stop. He followed me to bookstores, cafes, familiar places. Always lurking. Always watching. Once, I passed him on my way out of a cafe. He stepped into my path. Can we talk? He whispered. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the police, I said. He stepped back, panicked. Rachel, please don't, I said, my voice dead cold. You had your chance. He looked like a man who had been handed a death sentence. But that wasn't my problem. The girl he used to know, the one he could guilt and gaslight and cage, that girl was gone. Summer crept toward its end. I spent my days preparing for university, enrolling in online courses, attending Jinghua's virtual summer camp. I was meeting people from all over the country, future scientists, writers, leaders. My world expanded, while Ethan's shrank into a pit of regret and disgrace. One afternoon, as I packed my bags for Beijing, I opened a dusty drawer and found an old music box. A cheap plastic thing, peeling paint and all. Ethan gave it to me in our first year of high school. In my past life, I treasured it like gold. I couldn't sleep without winding it up. I picked it up now like a relic from another world. Mom, I said, slipping it into my purse. I'll be back soon. I walked alone to the riverside, the place where Ethan once promised forever, where we held hands and laughed under city lights. I stood at the railing, raised the box, and let go. It flew in a quiet arc and shattered against the rocks below. I didn't flinch. I turned, walked away, and caught a glimpse of Ethan behind a tree, eyes wide, broken, watching the last piece of our history crumble. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. The wreckage was his to grieve. I had a new life to live.
And it started now.
4 years passed like a silent tide, carving away everything soft in me and leaving behind a foundation so steady that no storm could shake it. Jinghua University became more than just an escapee, it was a crucible. I devoured every scholarship, every research opportunity, every sleepless night buried under data and theory. I built myself back piece by piece, not as the girl who once begged to be believed, but as a woman no one could ignore. In my junior year, I earned a coveted place as an exchange scholar at Harvard. By senior year, I'd secured a full ride to a direct entry PhD program abroad. I didn't celebrate these wins with loud parties or champagne. I celebrated them in silence, standing at my window at night, looking up at a sky that finally felt like it belonged to me. I rarely thought of Ethan Morgan anymore. When I did, it was like recalling a nightmare from childhood, blurry, shameful, almost absurd. Occasionally, my mother would mention fragments of gossip, like faded newspaper clippings. The Morgan family had collapsed fast. The Schoolgate scandal was just the first domino. Richard Morgan's legal troubles compounded, and a quiet whistleblower tipped off investigators about years of tax fraud and commercial deception. Within 6 months, the once mighty Morgan Group filed for bankruptcy. Richard was sentenced to 15 years behind bars. The source of the whistleblower's documents was never confirmed, but I had a strong suspicion that a certain old business contact of my father had made a discreet move. As for Vanessa Blake, she vanished after a short stint in custody. Her parents whisked her away like sweeping filth under a rug. No one in the city heard her name again. Ethan, stripped of his golden surname and all its privileges, didn't attend the vocational college he was assigned to. Instead, he tumbled through the underbelly of survival waiting tables, carrying bricks at construction sites, living paycheck to paycheck in cheap rentals. His once impeccable posture slumped. His clean-cut hands turned calloused. He had finally learned what it meant to be ordinary. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel pity either. What I felt was detachment, like watching a character in a book suffer a fitting end. It was done. It wasn't mine anymore. After graduation, Jinghua invited me back as a guest alum to speak at a high-level business forum. I agreed. The forum happened to be held in my hometown, the same city where everything had once ended and now, strangely, began again. I didn't tell anyone aside from my parents. For 3 days, I attended panels, exchanged ideas with industry leaders, and gave interviews in front of flashing cameras. I wore a sleek black suit, heels sharp enough to cut silence, and my name tag read Dr. Rachel Moore, AI Systems Research, Global Honors Scholar. The girl I used to be wouldn't have recognized me. On the final day, as I was debriefing with a group of panelists in the hotel lounge, my phone rang. Unknown local number. I stepped out into a quiet corridor before answering. Hello. There was no response at first. Only a low, breathy pause like someone was struggling to form words. I was about to hang up when I heard a voice.
Rough. Strained.
Familiar. Rachel, it's me. Ethan. The sound of his name didn't stir any pain, only a mild curiosity, like seeing an old coin you no longer used. Do you need something? I asked, my tone as even as the glass window beside me. He hesitated, then rushed on. I saw you in the news. You were incredible. Didn't call to ask for anything really. Just I wanted to say I'm sorry. I've thought about what I did. About you.
About us.
I was wrong. All of it. His voice trembled like a man standing naked in a blizzard, hoping for warmth. I said nothing. The silence stretched so long, he finally filled it with desperation. It's my mom, she's sick. It's bad. Uremia. She needs a transplant and I've tried everything. Sold what I could. Borrowed from everyone. But we're still short. I know I don't deserve to ask this, but please can you lend me something? He sounded like a beggar who still thought he was entitled to your sympathy. I let a few beats pass before responding. Of course, I said calmly. He let out a choked gasp, as if my response had peeled the frost from his bones. Really? Oh my God, Rachel. Thank you, I knew you still, don't misunderstand. I cut in sharply. You want money? You'll have to apply through the Moore Foundation. What? It's a private charity I started. We review cases. Your mother's full medical records. Your family's financial disclosures for the last 4 years. A 10,000-word personal statement outlining your work history, relationships, and moral reflections. If it passes our committee standards, you may receive a one-time emergency fund. The silence on his end was so thick it was almost alive. Rachel, he whispered, like the word could change my terms. That's the only path, I said. Take it or don't. And then, before he could play his next act, I added softly. By the way, when my parents came to you, when they begged you to speak up for me, you reported them for blackmail. I ended the call. That was my verdict. Later that evening, the forum concluded with a formal dinner. I gave a closing speech about the ethical application of artificial intelligence and the promise of moral accountability in tech leadership. My applause was warm, sincere, from people who had only ever known me as Rachel Moore, the scholar, the strategist, not the girl who once stood outside a locked room, screaming through tears. As I stepped into the hotel lobby afterward, ready to leave, I noticed a familiar figure by the valet stand. He was thinner than I remembered, his uniform threadbare, his hair overgrown and unkempt. He was directing traffic. A security badge hung from his chest like a scar. Ethan Morgan. His eyes found me as I approached, and he froze like a deer in headlights. The walkie-talkie in his hand slipped and hit the pavement. He didn't pick it up. He didn't move. He just watched. Watched the woman he used to own, the life he tried to ruin, glide past him surrounded by executives, lights, and power. Watched me step into a black car, my heels never slowing. I didn't acknowledge him. Not even a nod. The door shut with a soft click. As the car pulled away, I saw him shrinking in the rearview mirror, no longer a villain, just a relic of a past I'd buried with my own hands. That night, I received a message from my former advisor at Jinghua. Rachel, Professor Lies, the Nobel laureate is coming to China next week. He's read your thesis. He'd like to meet with you privately. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed my reply. It would be an honor. And for the first time in 4 years, my smile came easily, no longer weighed down by the memory of who I used to be. I wasn't someone's tragedy anymore. I was my own triumph. The morning sunlight filtered through the silk curtains like spilled champagne, golden and quiet, casting soft lines across the hotel room where I stood adjusting my collar in the mirror. My flight was in 4 hours, my suitcase already zipped, my itinerary filled with plans that stretched across oceans and futures I once believed were never mine to touch. Today, I would leave the city again, but this time, I would not be running, I would be rising. As I reached for my heels, my phone buzzed. I half expected it to be my assistant confirming my airport pickup, but the notification told a different story. A new message from an unfamiliar number. I tapped it open with mechanical disinterest, but paused when I saw the name at the bottom. Ethan Morgan, sent via his mother's phone. The message was brief, stripped of performance, reduced to naked words. Rachel, why did you treat me like this? Do you really hate me that much? Was everything we shared truly meaningless? For a long moment, I just stood there, the phone cold in my hand, the world holding its breath. Then I exhaled slowly and set the device face down on the table. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sorrow. What I felt was a kind of stillness, like standing in the eye of a storm after everything had already been shattered. Even now, he still didn't understand. He thought the story was about him. That love, once given, became an eternal debt. That forgiveness was the natural conclusion to every tragedy. But he was wrong. The story had never been about him. It was about me finally stepping off the page. That message was the last I ever saw from him. I blocked the number and never looked back. My flight touched down just after dusk, the skyline of a new city blooming in the distance like a galaxy stitched from steel and light. I began my doctoral program the very next morning, and the weeks that followed moved at a pace so fast I barely had time to breathe. Seminars, lab work, private consultations with Professor Lee, who introduced me as the most compelling young mind I've met in the last decade. I spoke at international summits. I co-authored papers that were published in journals I'd once only dared to admire from afar. But despite the velocity of progress, I carried a quiet in me. Not emptiness, more like depth. Like I had become a deeper vessel, capable of holding both memory and meaning without being swallowed by either. Sometimes, on quiet evenings after a long day in the lab, I would walk through the campus gardens alone. The breeze would tug at my coat and remind me that I was still here, that I had survived, that I had grown into someone whose value was not determined by her relationship to anyone else. One evening, as I stood by the glass railing of a rooftop conference, champagne in hand, I heard a group of researchers nearby whispering excitedly. "That's Rachel Moore, right? The girl who exposed that college scandal 4 years ago." "Yeah, she's a legend. But she never talks about it." "Of course she doesn't. Why would she? She already won." I smiled faintly into my glass. Not because of their words, but because they were right. I had already won, but not in the way the world thought. It wasn't about the headlines or the applause. The real victory was knowing I no longer needed any of it. The real victory was peace. And yet, life still has a way of circling back, of testing whether your silence is built on strength or fear. It was during my final year, when I returned to my hometown again, this time to launch a collaboration between our lab and Jinghua's engineering department. I stayed in the same five-star hotel, was welcomed by the same city officials, but everything felt different, brighter, lighter, mine. One afternoon between meetings, I decided to stop by the riverside. The same one where I had once thrown that broken music box into the rocks. I wasn't sure what I expected, maybe closure, maybe nothing at all. But as I approached the railing, I saw him.
Ethan.
He was sitting on a bench near the water, alone, dressed in the same security guard uniform I had last seen him in. His face was thinner, his eyes hollowed out by time and disappointment. He looked up and saw me. For a moment, he didn't move. Then slowly he stood. But he didn't come closer. He just watched. I met his gaze evenly, offering nothing. No smile. No nod. No acknowledgement of who he had once been to me. I simply turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard the bench creak as he sat back down. That was all.
No final confrontation. No dramatic closure.
Just a chapter left open on a page I would never reread. Because healing doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the way your heart doesn't race when you see the person who once broke it. In the way your breath stays steady. In the way you no longer need revenge to feel whole. A few weeks later, I received an invitation to speak at an International Women in Tech Symposium. As I stood on the stage in London, the auditorium filled with rising voices and futures yet unwritten, I looked out at hundreds of young women, brilliant, relentless, unbroken, and I thought about the girl I used to be. The girl who once thought love required silence. That survival meant surrender. That justice belonged to those with louder voices. I spoke of systems, innovation, and ethics. But I also spoke of resilience, of power reclaimed, of voices that refused to be erased. When I finished, the room erupted into applause that rang through my bones. And for the first time, I didn't just feel like someone who had survived. I felt like someone who was shaping what came next. Later that night, in my hotel room overlooking the Thames, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and wrote in my journal a habit I had revived, not for therapy, but for memory. I wrote one simple line. Goodbye is not a door that slams shut. It's the one you choose to leave open as you walk into the light. And I smiled. Because my story wasn't about the ruin they tried to make of me. It was about the woman I became despite them. The woman who no longer needed their apology, their guilt, or their permission. The woman who finally belonged only to herself.